On this edition of All Things Business, the podcast, we, myself and Ben, are joined by John Hewitt. Welcome, John. A long-term friend of All Things Business and founder of We Mind and Kelly Matters. So, John, for people that are unaware of yourself and the charity, just give us an introduction to yourself and how you came to be here with us today.
Well, we lost our daughter, Kelly, at the end of 2018. She took her own life. So we wanted to set up a charity as a legacy for her. We did that in March 2019, initially just to fundraise for other charities, but it's since moved on quite rapidly from there to the point where we're now providing frontline services for people that need counselling and support. We've gone from kind of providing nothing to last year we provided over 2,600 counselling sessions for free for people.
Wow.
And we're now we've got an emotional online support chat line, which is providing 3 hours a night, 365 days of the year.
It's incredible. I mean, I've learned in my 4 years of being with All Things Business a massive amount about the charity. A lot of that's come from obviously Ben and us being involved in raising awareness when we can, the challenges that you've taken to fundraise, the changes that have taken part. But Ben, you became aware of the charity and struck a chord straight away.
Well, right? Yeah, I mean, the Hewitts and the Thomases have been neighbours for 20 years, but John and I only met each other about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So sure, my mum and dad live on Doddington Road, next door but one to Wren. The but one is where the caretaker's house or home, and John's parents were caretakers there for how long were they there?
A long time.
A long time. So that was our family home growing up. I didn't. John and I have got lots of friends in common, and it was during lockdown actually. I went to school with a guy or a lad called Eugene Parbury, and we weren't particularly close, but he was in my year, and he's still somebody that I'd say hello to, and unfortunately he took his own life, and that was at the beginning of lockdown, and there was an old, down by the Crown and Anchor.
Yeah,
on the embankment. Yeah, there's a Clear Channel is the ad agency that have the it was like a big advertising billboard.
Yeah, and
I came in to the office one day and I rang our account manager at Clear Channel and said, look, and Eugene I think was the fifth or sixth person from Wellingborough that committed suicide in committed suicide is the wrong term, but took his own life in recent years. So Alex, one of our senior designers, and the rest of the team came up with this campaign which we call Wellingborough Cares. And Alex Goldsmith, the CEO of Medigold Health, he's a Wellingborough guy as well. He got wind of what we were doing, so we basically went halves and funded that advertising campaign for, I think it was up for about 3 or 4 months.
Yeah. And
then I remember I was in my kitchen when you rang me, and that phone call really, it was just, I'll never forget that phone call. It was probably about 45 minutes, and there was a few tears certainly my end, because I'd heard what John and his family had gone through, and it's about seeing how we can make a difference. And my thoughts on mental health, I think that is the pandemic. It was the pandemic before the pandemic, and if anything, it's probably got bigger since.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
And here we are at Mental Health Awareness Week, raising awareness, because one of the big things that I've found is with the national charities, a bit like with the national health system, they can't cope. And if you were to ring other mental health charities that are national, you'd probably struggle to speak to a counsellor within a month, John.
I think some of them are on 6 months.
Yeah, and if you just think to yourself how that individual must be to ask for help, and then to be told they can't speak to somebody for as long as that, and that's something that I'm really proud to see the charity do, because I think we're turning calls around within a couple of days.
Yeah, so we make contact with them within 48, 72 hours, and they're in front of a counsellor within a week, basically. There's no waiting list. We're just in a fortunate position where, because we're a young charity, we haven't got a waiting list. I mean, I'm guessing at some point that it will get extended, because, you know, even in the last 12 months, we've seen the figures have risen as people have become more and more aware of us. The numbers is staggering. The number of people that contact you and say they're struggling for various reasons. It's right across the board.
And this is where I was having this conversation with somebody a couple of weeks ago. Everybody sadly knows someone that's died of cancer. I think cancer's touched everybody, and the statistics are actually worse now than what they were maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah. It used to be 1 in 4, but I think it's everybody.
Well, I think 1 in 2 was one of the campaigns that I saw, and I do feel that with mental health, it's more people now know somebody that's suffering or has suffered with mental health problems, and men in particular. I think we are the ones that struggle to sometimes say. I mean, we did that podcast with Frazer a couple of months ago, and he compared it to, like, in his case, he was down in the dumps, but if you're drowning, you put your hand up.
Yeah.
But men don't know how to, and women, of course, as well. But I think it's a big conversation to have. But actually, it's a really simple one.
I think the most alarming thing for me is from just learning from what John's just said then, that the hardest part of that situation, and we've all been in it, is asking for help. But to ask for help, to quote Frazer, to put your hand up that you're drowning and somebody takes 6 months to jump in and save you, that's mind-blowing.
It's too long. It's way too long.
It's far too long. So be able to turn that round and have that conversation and get somebody in front of a counsellor in that time, that's incredible.
What would you like to see, John, happen on a national basis? So Dr. Alex has been appointed... I've forgotten his surname, but Dr. Alex has been appointed as, I think, an ambassador to the government. He's got a role within government around mental health ambassador role.
Yeah.
What would you like to see happen, fast forward to 2 years' time, to happen on a national basis?
I think the government have got to take it seriously, to be honest. The problem, I mean, it isn't just mental health. I mean, the NHS is drowning, to be fair. Somehow we've got to find more money to fund the NHS, full stop, but certainly the mental health side, it's got to be taken more seriously. I know, like you say, they've kind of appointed Dr. Alex, but I think in this country we spend too long talking about things and not actually actioning and things. We need some doers in government that are going to actually sit down and put things in place and make them happen, rather than just talk about them and talk about, we've committed X amount of £1 million to this, that and the other.
And do you think that that can start within education and supporting youngsters as they're going?
Yeah, we definitely need to support our youngsters more. The problem that I find, or the way I feel about it, is that with our generation and our fathers and our grandfathers, our great-grandfathers, we were the ones that have caused this issue, and our kids and grandchildren are going to pay the price for it. We were brought up to kind of dust ourselves off and not speak about things and not complain and not cry and things like that. But actually, I think the younger generation are aware that they can express their emotions more. But we've kind of caused this tidal wave where it's just not acceptable to kind of, like you say, put your hand up and say, I'm drowning. It's certainly from a male point of view.
My dad in 1990, he had a breakdown. He was...
my dad did as well. I think it might have been, around 1990s.
He was in... And I was 7, 8 at the time. And I remember it like it was yesterday. And I don't have... I mean, they're not happy memories, but they weren't necessarily very sad. Looking back at it, there's certain things that I remember that I was just, they'll always stick with me. But he's my hero. And when I started talking about mental health openly, I was probably around the Wellingborough Cares campaign, so 3-4 years ago. My dad pulled me to one side and he said, "Son, are you sure you want to do this?" I was like, "Yeah, why?" He said, "It's a taboo subject."
Yeah,
it's a taboo subject, and he was trying to look out for me because of, and I then had to have a more detailed conversation to understand his perspective, and he's a bit older than us, so he perhaps isn't as more widely aware now of society and community as what he perhaps was. But then he gave me examples of how we had certain family members and friends of our family that just dropped us. And when I say dropped us, my mum didn't drive. She was a school teacher, as you know. My dad was the main breadwinner, if you like. He was the only one that drove. And he was in St Andrew's Hospital for 8 weeks. And yeah, my mum felt incredibly lonely at the time. And I did. And this is stuff that I've only really learnt about in recent years. But even now, or up until a few years ago, Dad and Mum still thought that mental health was a bit of a taboo subject. Yeah. And they wanted to protect me from telling that story or from sharing that. You could probably imagine what I said to them.
Yeah.
In terms of,
I won't repeat it.
But I do believe that, because I think if you don't know anybody that's had mental health challenges, or you haven't had any mental health challenges yourself, you're a very, very lucky person, and you're definitely the minority in this country now.
I think irony is probably the wrong word, but as John said, it's come full circle that your parents are trying to protect you from it, to not talk about it. But the knock-on effect of that is not talking about it. Is you've got two decisions to make, right?
Yep.
One's make a phone call to the charity, and one we don't ever want to happen. So it's educating more people that it's okay to not be okay, and to reach out and talk to somebody. Because if we all just shut it down, it's not good. It's not good.
The flip side of that as well is that people, if you're on the other side of that and you see somebody struggling, then there's nothing wrong with approaching them and asking them if they're okay, and actually helping them to get the help that they need. And a classic example of that is we did a beer mat campaign before Christmas, and I think we got the beer mats and the bar coasters in 60 odd pubs around Northamptonshire.
Yeah,
and somebody, this was early this year, contacted the charity. They'd decided that they'd had enough. They were going to take their own life. They'd been out and bought what they needed to do it, and it was going to be on this certain day, and somebody handed them one of our beer mats. And just that simple action of, I know you're not okay. Look, please contact these guys. Has actually potentially saved that person's life.
Well, it did. It's very powerful. And when you hear about that, you don't know how many people you've saved, but you know that you're making a difference and you are saving people's lives.
Yeah. The charity's definitely definitely making a difference.
Yeah.
Like you say, we could never say how many lives are being saved. But I mean, we get feedback from people that come in and have counselling, and it's all positive, and it's all they're appreciative that there's somebody there. Once they realise that there's somebody there to help them, they're appreciative that they can get in front of us and they can talk to somebody that's going to help them kind of figure things out, work things out, and put them into some sort of order.
That's what it is. We bang the drum and shout from the rooftops all the time that there's always somebody there to help you.
Yeah.
No matter how lonely you are, what time of the day it is, there is somebody there that you can speak to.
And they care. It's not just a job. It's a passion. It's something they care deeply about. It's helping people.
Yeah. And Sherry Adams, who's the CEO of the charity, I mean, she's pretty special. I just couldn't do her job. I think
no,
because she does such an amazing job for the charity, but she also counsels people herself and has helped, I would imagine, hundreds of people in her career to date.
Yeah, she runs the charity. As a family, we're just there in the background to help facilitate the finances and fundraising and things like that. Sherry runs it on a daily basis. Like you say, she's a qualified counsellor as well. But the other thing, I hope she don't mind me saying, but she gives her time up for the Samaritans and things like that. So she goes to some of the festival weekends and whatever. And she's just one of those incredible people. There's numerous people associated with the charity that are just amazing. Like you say, I couldn't do it.
And that leads us on. So when the walk has just taken place, which tens of thousands of people participate in, and the charity has changed the name slightly. So we started the charity, or you started the charity, sorry, as We Mind and Kelly Matters. Just talk us through the name change. Well,
so the name, I remember myself and Kelly's mum and sister Amy stood in my kitchen, and it was only a few months after we'd lost Kelly. We were still in shock. We were still incredibly angry at Kelly's employer for the way they treated her. And the name kind of came about, really, it was born out of frustration and anger. We Mind and Kelly Matters. But it's become apparent over the last 3 or 4 years that it does cause confusion with some people. It's a really long-winded name. It's got the word mind in there, which Mind is a charity in its own right anyway. And over the past 3 years, we've been doing some quite large fundraising events like cycling under the banner of Kelly's Heroes. And that just seems to be the name that's more kind of associated with the charity. So we had a trustee meeting a few weeks ago and decided that we were going to change the name to Kelly's Heroes. So that's now going to, you'll start seeing that come through on social media and in all the literature and everything else that we produce.
Brilliant. And looking ahead to end of August, you've got 2 big fundraising events.
We've got a joint Kelly's Heroes and Wellingborough Golf Club golf day on the 31st of August. And it will be a full day. There's golf, and then in the marquee in the evening for the dinner. And they're going to put some entertainment on as well. And then on the Saturday, the 2nd of September, again at the golf club, there's in the marquee, there's going to be a summer ball take place. And the details will be published over the coming weeks over social media and on the website.
Brilliant. Business owners or people that are listening to this but they're employed by a company that perhaps don't have a mental health support service for their employees, how can they work with Kelly's Heroes, or how can Kelly's Heroes work with them to support their workforce?
So we're already working with some businesses, admittedly predominantly from the industry that I've kind of grown up in, but basically we're kind of people are making donations or they're actually paying for the mental health first aid training courses, suicide awareness and prevention courses. There's a lot of courses that we offer that people don't necessarily know about, that we can go into businesses and basically help to train their employees, the managers, the directors, to make them more aware of mental health and suicide prevention.
Brilliant. So if somebody listening to this hasn't got a charity of the year, they love playing golf, or they haven't got any mental health first aiders, and just do you know, is that like a ratio, like for every 100 staff you need to have 2?
I don't know, to be honest.
But every business, I know we've got 2 here.
Yeah, we've got 2 here. We've embraced it hugely. I think one thing as well, probably for people again with Kelly's Heroes, how important that is. You only touched lightly on the fundraising that you've done, the challenges that you've done, but my wording might be wrong, but you almost undersold what you've done there. on a number of occasions. The first one, cycling from Land's End to John O'Groats, or the other way around.
John O'Groats to Land's End,
I knew I'd get one part wrong. How much money you raised for the charity? Just
in the 2 cycle rides, over 300,000.
Which is a phenomenal amount of money.
It's certainly helped to kind of roll out these services.
So then that you take the £300,000 and the was it 2006 counselling sessions that have been.
So 2021 was 455 counselling sessions. 2022 was over 2,600.
It's phenomenal. So
And it'll be more than that this year, won't it?
Yeah, it's running. It's increasing.
So when we talk to businesses about not having a charity of the year or wanting to get involved with fundraising, you can see directly there the correlation between the money raised and how it's used. And like we just said, that's going to get bigger, unfortunately.
Yeah, and obviously I'm getting older, so I can't keep doing these bike rides every year. But we've got another one kind of loosely planned for 2025. But
before we come on to that, just for people listening or watching this, the second ride, that was across America.
It was across Europe and America. So we started on World Suicide Prevention Day, 10th of September, down in northern Spain. Cycled up through the Pyrenees, across the Alps, cycled over Mont Ventoux, which is one of the Tour de France mountains that they race over, up round Geneva, and finished up in Germany. That took 10 days. I think that was about 1,900 miles in total. And then we drove home early the following morning, and 2 days later jumped on a plane, flew out to New York and cycled from New York to San Francisco. We crossed the Golden Gate Bridge on the 10th of October, which is World Mental Health Day, which obviously the Golden Gate Bridge is pretty synonymous with suicide.
So 2025, what's the loose plan?
I haven't got. There's going to be a ride. We haven't actually. We're going to.
I don't know how you top that.
No.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. I in all honesty, I don't know. And when we finished the last one, I said never again. Not because of the cycling, but more to do with the organising, because it took me 18 months to put it all together. But I've had a bit of a break now, and I've recharged my batteries. So we're gonna this summer we're gonna start working on planning for that. And actually next year, while I'm talking about it, one of the ladies that did the European ride with us, Sarah Ball, she's climbing Kilimanjaro next September 2024. So she's putting a team of about 20 people together, and they're going to do that to raise funds and awareness for us as well.
Excellent.
It's phenomenal. And that's all the people that are involved in it, all the individuals that are aligned with the charity, the businesses that have supported and raised that awareness. Yeah. And that's a huge community born out of obviously a hugely tragic scenario, but that shows there's a huge group of people that are making a difference and will continue to make a difference. And yeah, you just need to keep talking about it and getting people involved.
Yeah, and I think businesses, when you said about what, how can businesses get involved? I mean, the thing is, every day people are going off sick. And I used to be an employer, and you'd always be kind of frowning on the people that regularly didn't turn up. But we never really took the time. I was definitely ignorant in the past before we lost Kelly, but it doesn't actually mean they're just necessarily throwing a sickie just for the sake of throwing a sickie. Some people physically cannot get out of bed because they're struggling that much, and anxiety and depression takes over, I think employers these days need to take more of a responsibility towards their employees, the welfare of their employees. It's not just we only care about you when you walk in the door. When you walk out the door, it's nothing to do with us. I think it's a round the clock thing, to be honest, with mental health. You
mentioned earlier about Kelly's employer. Are you happy to talk about that? Are you allowed to talk about that?
Yeah. I'm more than happy to talk about it. But.
For those that may not be aware, just if you can, just give us a summary of how that escalated the tragic circumstances that ended?
Well, she took an overdose in September, and as far as we knew as a family, she was being supported by like an external body that her employer brought in as like a welfare company that comes in and looks after their staff. But it escalated from there to she wasn't supposed to be doing certain parts of her job, but one manager would let her do them, another manager wouldn't. She was walking around with a bandage on her arm, and managers in one of the investigations that happened afterwards, they admitted that they knew that she was self-harming and that she was kind of abusing her medication because she was regularly running out of tablets. And even with this bandage on her arm, nobody actually asked her what it was. And my point to that is, if she came in on crutches with a plaster on her, with a plaster cast on her leg, they'd ask her what happened to her leg, how did she break a bone in the leg? But they shied away from the fact that she'd got this bandage on her arm because they were aware of it, but they weren't comfortable talking about it. And it got to the point just before Christmas where at the Christmas party she confided in a colleague that she was going to take her own life over Christmas while her mum and sister were out of the country. That person broke that confidence, rightly so, went to one of the main people in the organisation and had the conversation with them, and they didn't do anything about it. In fact, they actually made it worse, because the day that she took her own life, they actually pulled her in and confronted her over something that she was involved in, but she wasn't responsible for. She had a bit part play in it. But again, my argument was she shouldn't have been put in that position in the first place, because she shouldn't have even been at work, to be fair. And I think that the meeting on that day was designed to try and force her out of the business, because it was just too complicated for them, and it was too messy, and it was taking up too much time. So they tried to kind of force her to leave, but actually what it did was it was the final nail or it was the final straw that broke the camel's back, and she went home, and the rest is history.
John, I just want to say thank you for sitting down with us today and sharing it. I'm sure this is definitely going to make a difference to other people. You and your family have definitely made a difference and helped to save hundreds, if not thousands, of people so far. And we just want to keep supporting you in the awareness and the pushing of everything we can do. And
Thank you.
Thanks, mate.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks, John.
Cheers, Frazer. Thank you.